Hello everyone, we're back with Dr. Cowan. This should be number 5 for you. We're starting at the bottom of page 6 with Nietzsche. So just to review, we talked about collision, which is the good with the good, right? This is when you have like love versus love, something that's good versus something else that's good, but they come into collision in different, because they're, well, you get what I'm saying. It says the most poignant situation, I think I gave the example of Ophelia on a knife's edge, having to choose between her father's love and her boyfriend's love. I'm sure some of us will find ourselves in that situation in our own life. Hopefully not. Nietzsche continued this view of tragedy as representing forces in conflict with each other, as he expressed it between the Apollonian and the Dionysian poles in human culture and in individual persons. As Gerald L's comments highlight, Nietzsche saw the rise of tragedy out of the dark womb of the Dionysian, that indispensable, all-confounding primal unity of joy and pain, which lies at the heart of life itself. Stop. Okay, so in the margins, I want you to write that Apollo is the god of art. See? Apollo, I have my little Apollo tattoo. And Dionysus is the god of wine and revelry, or you could say passion. So Apollo is the god of art. Dionysus is the god of wine and passion, or wine and revelry, all the fun things. But the problem with all the fun things is they have to have a place to be fun. Question, Gianna? Oh yeah, okay. After itself. So if you have a passion for something, you have to have a place to put it, and that's art. So let's say you're a really good singer, like you're blessed with this voice, or maybe you're a good player of an instrument, like you, Samantha. I don't know, you're just carrying your instrument all the time. And so what do? Well, if you're blessed with that, you play the instrument, or you sing the songs, you work on your voice, right? If you're a good athlete, you find a sport that you love and you express yourself that way. If you're a good artist, you find your favorite medium and you go with it that way. But unexpressed passion leads to violence. Okay? I was just kind of talking about that a passion, that kind of energy, she calls it the primal energy. That kind of animal primal energy has to have a place to go. If it doesn't have a place to go, it comes out violently. And so we urge everyone to find their passion. We don't just say that like it's a Hallmark card. We say it because we know that you need to have something to do that you love, so you don't do other things that are bad. Make sense? And in the 20th century, Max Scheler, building on Hegel and Nietzsche, reiterates the idea of tragedy as representing a conflict between two values. Highlight that, sorry. Tragedy representing a conflict between two values in which, though such a clash generates new meaning, it nonetheless destroys something keenly valuable. Stop. Scheler is adamant, circle adamant, about the necessity of acknowledging a potential tragic presence in the depths of existence. As he comments, highlight, it is impossible to arrive at the phenomenon of the tragic through the art product alone. So the art product is the play or drama or poem. The tragic is rather, top of 7, the tragic is rather an essential element of the universe itself, the material made use of by the art product, and the tragedian must contain beforehand the dark strain of this element. Stop. So in other words, you have to have the passion before you can put it in the art. If you don't have the passion for it, it's going to be empty and shallow with lacking meaning. It'll be one of those songs you hear on the radio that's really fun, but it doesn't feed you. It doesn't feed you intellectually or spiritually. It's just fun, right? And that's fine, but you can't live on that. You know, I'm sure that if you only had Skittles for lunch today, that might be fine for one day, but you can't live on it. There's no substance there. That's kind of the same thing, that if you don't have substance, it says if you don't have the dark beforehand, the dark strain of the passion, you can't really make the art. Basically, you can't force someone to be good at something they don't enjoy. The tragic then, according to Scheler, highlight is not the result of an interpretation of the world and the important events of the world, but inheres in events, in people, in fortunes. It's given off by a heavy breath, or sometimes like an obscure glimmering that surrounds them. Stop. Scheler continues, in it a specific feature of the world's makeup appears before us, and not a condition of our own ego, nor its emotions, nor its experience of compassion and fear. Highlight. What he calls the tragic knot occurs in the inner entanglement between the creation of a value and the destruction of a value as they take place in the unity of the tragic action and event. When we see the catastrophe as a species of transcendent necessity for which no blame can be attached, then and only then do we have tragedy. In other words, tragedy is necessary because you have to clear the decks. You have to wash away the bad sometimes, and tragedy is the thing that does that. It clears everything out, the good and the bad, sadly. It's a total purging. If society's broken, like it says in number 7 of our tragic recipe, but in time it fixes itself if people can learn from it. If they can't, you devolve into total chaos, anarchy. It's a mess. There's just no city left. We're all, I don't know where we'd go after that, but tragedy is supposed to clear. It's supposed to be a purging. That's what catharsis is, a purging, so you can start again. Make sense? Lionel Abel in America and Roman Ingarden in Poland proceed in this vein, viewing tragedy as ontological rather than ethical, psychological, or aesthetic. For Abel, tragedy produces a vision of the highlight or circle irremediable. It's unable to be remediated, so you can't make it up like you do a test. The tragic vision, he maintains, results from a direct act of seeing rather than from holding any particular view. Keep going. The tragic writer provides the noblest view of human adversity, portraying a world wherein supreme values collide, one in which we know we could not live. Stop. Which is why we have to clear the decks. Tragedy clears everything, and because you can't live in the tragic space. Everything's got to be washed away so you can start fresh. Which is probably why we have flood stories in all religious traditions, right? God takes water and he washes the whole world of its sin. There's flood stories in every religious tradition dating back to the Greeks. Because it's a metaphor for washing things clean, for clearing everything and starting again. Ingarden is openly metaphysical. It's more like spiritual. In his conception of the literary work of art in general, the tragic, in his view, is among those essences which are not properties in the usual sense of the term, nor are they in general features of some psychic state, but instead they are usually revealed as an atmosphere, as an atmosphere which penetrates and illumines everything with its light. Keep highlighting to the end of the paragraph. In realizing them, we enter into primal existence. We have a secret longing for their realization and contemplation, even if they are frightful. Tragedy, both of these writers would say, is primarily concerned not so much with discerning a tension at the heart of being to which mortals resonate in their depths. Not so much with examining philosophical ideas or ethical standards as with discerning a tension at the heart of being to which mortals resonate in their depths. In other words, just like we've been talking about all along with that video from the School of Life, we can't judge people because bad things happen to them. Sometimes, most of the time, it's not their fault. So we can't judge them, as he says, ethically. We can't hold our own ethical standards. Like if you're a Christian and you judge someone for doing something non-Christian, well, maybe they're not a Christian. Maybe they're Muslim. Maybe they're atheist. Why are you judging them from your standard? Also, why are you judging them at all? Right? That's not really our job. Our job is to hear their story, hopefully empathize with them, and just help them grow. If they have to be held accountable, that's fine. You know, if someone does something bad to you, you should expect an apology. But you can't think that they're like the devil because they made a mistake. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Page 8, the tragic art form. So here's where we talk more about the tragic recipe. We've already discussed this a little bit. If the tragic vision has given rise to great diversity of interpretation, the tragic structure, in contrast, has been regarded throughout history with surprising rigidity. Of course, the Aristotelian rules dominated the theory and practice of tragic artistry for several centuries. But even after the 19th century break with the unities, critics and dramatists themselves have constantly felt the need to demand certain specifics of the tragic art, giving rise to basic imperatives concerning the proper form for tragedy. Highlight. Many have thought there is a prescribed shape to its plot, that it should be condensed, limited in time and space, with a peripetia, a reversal, and an anagnoresis, a recognition, ending in the death of the protagonist. Stop. But then questions have arisen. Is the protagonist necessarily male? Must he commit a terrible deed, make an egregious mistake? Should he always be guilty of hubris? Is he a scapegoat, Isaiah's rejected, despised of men? Or should he be a public leader, a magnanimous soul, our highest representative, our bravest contender? Our divine presence is essential to tragedy. Does it need a chorus? Highlight. These questions are, of course, unanswerable, if not perhaps irrelevant. One can say is that if the tragic action means ending in a certain place, a black hole, then any way one gets there seems sufficient. Stop. In other words, those questions that she's asking, yes, but it doesn't matter. Because, I mean, it can be a male, but it can also be a female. Most of the time it's male because of the overabundance of the masculine in a tragedy. As tragedies move too fast, we know masculine moves too fast. Does he have to make an egregious mistake? No, not necessarily. It can be a buildup of small mistakes. You know, one little lie is probably not too bad, but a collection, 10 years of lies builds up to bad things, right? So yes and no. If you find yourself in that black hole, that place where there is no time, where everything is at a standstill, then however you got there, tragedy. We have been suggesting that the tragic, rather than being a primarily aesthetic phenomenon, is a metaphysical occurrence given form. Okay, so let's highlight this. Rather than being a primarily aesthetic, meaning artistic phenomenon, it is a metaphysical occurrence given form, and to be judged by its ability to call down upon its viewers a certain response. Stop. In other words, tragedy comes from outside the physical space, like this, it comes from this more spiritual space in our soul, and through the art product, it's given form, just like passion is given form through art as well. Admittedly, in its infrequent appearances throughout the centuries, one can observe certain strategies it has employed to secure its effect, certain themes and situations, images and symbols. Whatever constants we find, however, are neither necessary nor sufficient, even though many of them have recurred with notable regularity in the tragic canon. Largely Greek in their origins, so these themes, symbols, images, situations, they are absent from the Book of Job, for example, as from the Iliad, Lorca's Blood Wedding, Faulkner's Light in August, Alan Tate's lyric poem The Cross, Robert Penn Warren's Brother to Dragons, and Toni Morrison's Beloved, all of which are in some measure versions of tragedy. Highlight. Hence, one must infer the traditional themes and convictions of tragedy are not its absolute essentials. However we may analyze the parts of tragic drama, the conviction persists that something, top of 9, keep highlighting, something beyond its separable elements is responsible for its tragic nature. It takes place in a tragic world, for one thing, and in that world no action, even if comic in itself, can dispel the ominous shadow. For all of his jokes, quips, Hamlet must die the death. Stop. So I've talked about Hamlet before. I actually showed you that clip, remember? Do you remember seeing the clip of Hamlet? You guys weren't in here. I should maybe show it again. I showed it during comedy.